Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Audrey Zabin, and I am a geriatric social worker who will be presenting today on proactive elder and adult care planning. I thank you for your patience and indulgence today. I encourage you to ask questions. Please feel free to type them in, and if we have some time at the end of the session, I'll certainly answer them. And if we don't have time at the end of the session, I want to reassure you that I will get back to you. So today's presentation is on proactive elder planning. And what I do hope to do today is to begin to set the stage for aging in America, some of the key factors and how you can help your seniors assess their needs as they become older, begin to discuss some of the wide range of services available out there, deal with what we call long-distance caregiving, and how to begin to plan for the future. You know, I've been doing this for over 20 years, and I think the good news is that in that time period, there have been more and more options for elder care. I think the difficulty is that with more options, you need to be a more educated consumer. So I think as this first slide shows you that by 2030, we'll have a tremendous increase in seniors over the age of 65. And I can tell you right now in 2017 that the system is not ready to care for everyone who will be aging. So it's now even more important than it was 20 years ago to begin to plan, because there's going to be a tremendous need out there. One of the I would say one of the foundations for elder care in the United States, which has survived, is the Older Americans Act. And this is a very good place for you to all begin, no matter where you are in the United States. And I'm presenting here from Massachusetts and know my own Massachusetts services, but in the United States, the Older Americans Act is all throughout the country, and it's often referred to as the AAAs, which are the Area Agencies on Aging. And these offices are all over the United States. You can go online and find the one closest to your senior. And they were all built to offer areas of support for seniors in 5 key core areas, which is the caregiving, nutrition, health and wellness, elder rights, and supportive services. If you're not familiar with the AAAs, it's a very good first step for you. And let me just remind you that it's probably better that you begin to do all of your research where the senior is living or will be living. I know, for example, in Massachusetts, my office offers very different services than perhaps in a more rural community, whereas transportation, for example, might be more of a key service in more rural areas, and perhaps nutrition might be a more important area in a more urban area. So it pays to know what the services are in the area where the senior will be living. So I guess what I'd like to talk about with this slide is the importance of caregiving, and certainly who they are, what they do, and the stress of it all. Certainly, caregiving today requires a lot of time, and I think employers are beginning to find that there's a need for their employees to be more educated about elder care, because it does result in absences and people not being as available for work. And at one time, it used to be just childcare, but more and more, you'll find that EAP programs are offering education in this area. Aging at home does seem to be the main choice for seniors today. And I think that as time evolves, because there are less and less options, you're going to find that more and more seniors want to live at home. Aging at home can be tricky because it can be isolating, and it does also limit the kind of oversight for care that an impaired senior may need as they age in place. Probably one of the best ways to overcome this kind of limitation, if someone were to age in place, is to be as proactive as you can and to plan ahead. So I like this little escalator that I've written up here, because I think it does draw a very good correlation between the elder's needs on the top and the level of effort for caregiving for the caregiver along the left-hand side. So, you know, certainly when elders first start out and they're retired, they begin to suffer some social losses, or they can. So perhaps they no longer have their daily routine of going to work, or perhaps they've now suffered, they've lost a spouse. So they're beginning to be a little more isolated, and the need becomes a little more for social engagement. And then as you begin to age, there are other issues that may come into play. So for example, maybe they cannot walk up the stairs, or they cannot carry the groceries home anymore. So certain tasks become more difficult, and again, family caregivers become more involved in that process. And then we go a little further up the ladder, and you'll begin to see as people age in place that perhaps they're no longer driving, perhaps they need more health care, perhaps they just need a little more queuing for different activities. And certainly at the top of the scale is where you see the multitude of tasks for basically what in elder care we refer to as the ADLs. And you're going to hear this phrase quite a bit. ADLs stand for the activities of daily living. And it's anything from bathing and dressing to cooking to medication management to even being able to ambulate, perhaps to walk with or without assistance. The ADLs become a very critical part in assessing an elder's needs all along this escalation scale. So, so how do we begin to assess? How do we begin to observe the different needs of a senior? And we are going to divide this into multiple levels, because as you know, everyone is different. So everyone's needs are different. But if you look at this slide and you see what we've outlined here, I would suggest to you that these are probably the main areas for you to focus on to assess a senior's overall needs. So certainly physical condition and health care becomes important. And I would suggest to you that physical condition is as much about safety and being safe in a person's home, as well as healthcare and getting your flu shot and your pneumonia shot. Let's not forget that a person, senior, anyone, needs to be safe behind a closed door. And if you feel that their balance is not good, or if you feel that they have hearing loss, or they have vision loss, that all affects safety in the home, physical condition. And then, of course, I touched briefly on what are called the ADLs, the activities of daily living. And this has become a standard grid for assessing an elder's need as they begin to age and as you begin to determine their safety in their living environment. Of course, mental and an emotional condition is very important. Are they depressed from isolation? Are they sleeping well? Because that affects mood. Social supports, we know, for example, that social engagement actually is a healthy tool in warding off dementia, certain dementias today. I hope that everyone's doing a crossword puzzle, because that's one of the best ways to keep someone engaged. They're cognitively engaged. And social supports, we now know that square dancing, for example, is one of the healthiest activities today. It keeps your mind and your body active, and it's wonderful social engagement. And then informal supports. Begin to look at what are informal supports for your seniors. So, for example, perhaps the mail carrier, the person who delivers the mail every day, that senior may have a relationship with that person. And you know what? If they don't, it's sometimes a great idea to chat up that mail carrier and have them begin to develop a relationship with that senior who lives alone at home. Because they're going to tell you if the mail is piling up. They're going to notice if that person hasn't picked up the mail every day. Or the bank teller. If your senior comes in once a week to cash their check or to make a withdrawal and they suddenly don't show up, you want to know about that. And this is very important for long-distance caregivers. I know there's always a lot of anxiety and concern when you're long distance, because it's not that easy to check in on a daily basis. But these are the kind of folks who can do that for you. Certainly environmental safety is important. So, for example, if someone is using a walker, you don't want to have a lot of throw rugs around the house at this time. And by the way, it might be useful for you to go to the primary care physician and ask that they make a referral to the local VNA and that you have a home safety evaluation done through physical therapy or occupational therapy. So these are all very helpful tools as you begin to assess the needs of your senior. So you can have a home safety evaluation done in 2017, and maybe have it again in 2018 to see how the needs have changed. And of course, financial resources are very, very important. Why? Because they're going to support your needs now and in the future. Again, we've reviewed the ideas of activities of daily living. This is the list in detail. Why this is so very important is because as you begin to plan ahead, whether you're looking at long-term care insurance or you're looking at assisted livings or nursing homes, this is the assessment standard. This is the grid that determines who gets accepted, who doesn't, what kind of needs they need, etc. So the ADLs become really paramount in planning ahead for a senior. The IADLs are a set of tools and skills that we look at prior to ADLs. Typically, if you are living alone at home, you're living independently, you should be able to communicate your needs, be able to transport yourself, which doesn't necessarily mean driving, but you should be able to maneuver work within a bus schedule or a train schedule or Uber today to get yourself to a doctor. You should be able to do your own shopping, cooking, house cleaning, or arrange for these things. These IDLs are a standard by which someone would be considered to be able to live independently at home. So once you've done this assessment and you begin to look at supportive options, there are both formal and informal options. I have reviewed some of these. The more formal options today, such as home health aides or community services, one of the best ways for you to begin this process of research is to go to those AAAs that I spoke to you about earlier. And I think everyone keeps these, slide presentations, so they'll have all of that information to go back to look at. The other formal community services out there are the abundance of assisted living and senior care communities that are popping up all over the community today. One relatively new, formal, but really helpful community support I would just like to suggest to you, and if we have time, I can answer questions about it. It's called the Village Program, and perhaps you can Google it on your own. But what the purpose of the Village Program, it's a membership organization whereby seniors who live at home and want to age in place at home can join a membership organization and then thereby avail themselves to an abundance of support services that will allow them to stay safely home. So for example, if you need a plumber, these plumbers have already been vetted. They offer a, perhaps sometimes they offer a reduced rate, but even for you, perhaps as the long distance caregiver, if your mom is still living in her home and maybe she has a little dementia and the toilet is broken, and your mom is a member of a local village program, you can call the village program and have them send a plumber, and you know that this person has been vetted and that they're safe and that the bill will come to you and they will speak to you directly. Your mother with this mild dementia doesn't have to negotiate all of this. So it's a real advantage for people today who want to age in place at home. It's called the Village Program. It was started here in Massachusetts under the Beacon Hill Villages. And I'd be happy to send anyone more information about that. So home health services today, nursing, home health aides, etc. These are both available private pay and then through Medicare. And I think one of the biggest questions that people have and are confused about all the time is the Medicare part of this. Because, and that's very understandable because regulations change all the time. So let me just say to you that what happened to your Aunt Betty 3 years ago when she got out of the hospital for a replaced hip is not going to be the same services that is available to your mom today when she gets a replaced hip. So today in 2017, Medicare's services are very limited. They're finite. They're for an acute episode only. So you will get a visiting nurse after that broken hip, but for a limited amount of time. You will get a physical therapist, but for a limited amount of time. And that's one of the main differences today. So my advice to families today, don't count on Medicare services as a long-term service to keep someone aging in place at home.
Yeah, somebody said we jumped over slide 13.
So these are the home health services, and we talked about how all of these people come into the home. They're either private pay or Medicare. And then I went right to Medicare to discuss Medicare services. Okay. So I think we're on 14, if I'm correct.
I thought that's where you
were. Yeah, okay. So again, as I mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, you know, the good news is there is an abundance of services available to seniors to bring into a home or an assisted living wherever you are today. Every service on this slide you can buy privately. The question for you is how much time and what are the needs? So you can get any of these services to come into your home today. I think one of the biggest challenges for people today is the long distance caregiving. There are a lot of challenges in this. How do you stay in touch? Building a support network, getting your family together. This is one of the bigger challenges that I work on today with families, and every case you manage it differently. One of the best suggestions that I can make for you if you are a long distance caregiver today is to look at finding and hiring a care manager. I myself am a care manager by training, and this is the association. It's a national private nonprofit professional association whereby you can put in the zip code of the senior and you can hire someone locally who can be a consultant to you and your family on issues of care in that particular community. The reason that I like and I often counsel people to go to this slide and to look and work locally is because in my estimation, the best care is always local. So you want to hire a social worker who knows the director of nursing in the assisted living or in the nursing home where your elder is going to move to, okay? You want to know who the best visiting nurse association is in the elders community. In fact, one of the things I often recommend to caregivers for a reason other than caregiving is that I often suggest that if you can, to join a caregiver support group where the elder lives. And the reason for that is you might not need a bit of the touchy-feely caregiver support group that for me as a social worker, I might present. But you may sit next to someone in the group who had a wonderful home health aide who is no longer working and is looking for work. And that person might be sitting right next to you and say, you know, I had this wonderful caregiver and she's looking for work. I highly recommend her. And there you found a wonderful local support service that you would not have found anyplace else. So I would suggest to you that the best care is local care. So you want to speak and get references and counsel from local people who know the direct area. So even if you have the best of intentions and the best of plans, how often do I hear my mother has thrown the caregivers out of the house, or no one's going to talk to me, or they told me my mother won't take any of my suggestions. So that could be true. So how do you begin to get a senior to accept services? Well, I'm telling you, you have to be patient. I remember my dad had a terrible stroke, and I was feeding him one day, and he started to laugh at me, and I think I was in my early 30s, and he started laughing at me, and I said, "Dad, why are you laughing?" And he said, "Because I used to diaper you." And I thought to myself, well, of course he's not going to take any advice from me. He still sees me as this little girl. So, and here I was a geriatric social worker, so you can imagine how I felt. But it was a stunning realization for me that what we want to do is find a trusted individual that senior listens to. And that's what you go about doing. Don't get frustrated or be, impatient. Find the person who has your parent's ear. So for example, what I have noticed in my work, that this generation holds the word of the doctor as golden. And so, unlike my generation, I'm not going to tell you my age, but my generation questions the doctor all the time, which is what we've learned to do. But, my parents don't. So when it was time for my mother to stop driving, I spoke to the doctor ahead of time, and I had the doctor write a prescription that said, "No more driving, Helen." And we put it on the refrigerator because I knew that my mother would respect a doctor's order. So not always easy, but you have to find that respected, that trusted person who has the senior's ear so that they won't say no to them. So as you begin to evaluate the quality of services, this is a list, of what you want to consider and think about. I would also, again, urge you to go local. If you can find some local providers, some local consumers, that's probably one of the best ways for you to identify and be able to evaluate the quality of services. I would also tell you that I think 24/7 is important, especially if you are a long-distance caregiver. You want to find those services that offer that service to you. People are on call all the time now. I think that's important. And to plan ahead for a crisis. As I said to you, I've been doing this a very long time, and I'm going to tell you my epithet is going to read, she begged people to plan for their aging. We know it's going to happen. We absolutely know it's going to happen. It's like the Nile, right? People are in denial about this. So begin to plan for it. Get all the legal documents together. A word about legal documents, every state is different. I can tell you, for example, in Massachusetts, our substituted judgment is for healthcare proxy and power of attorney. Other states may have living wills. I think you need to know what those are and get your legal documents in place. You should also have a list of medications for your senior. There's something called a vial of life, V-I-A-L, and Google it and you'll see. It's sort of a checklist of everything that would be important to know about a senior. In the state of Massachusetts, what we do is we leave a vial of life on the refrigerator. And our ambulance drivers are programmed or taught to go, when they go into a house, to look on the fridge. And if that vial of life is there, they take it with them. And it has all the vital information on your senior. And that includes a healthcare proxy or a living will. So these are kinds of things that you can begin to plan for ahead of time. Certainly, getting all this important information, beginning to do some research is always helpful. Thanksgiving is coming up. If you're going to go visit your senior for a few days, why don't you go look at some of the local assisted livings and some of the rehabs just while you're here? Because if you're on the West Coast, you can be damn sure that while you're on the West Coast and your mom's on the East Coast, that someone's going to call you for someone's broken a hip and they have to go someplace. Wouldn't it be nice for you to know ahead of time where that person, your loved one, is going and what it looks like. It really does offer you a little peace of mind. I have 3 minutes to spare. I did it. The slides that follow are a number of resources, and perhaps I'll leave you to review those because I don't know if there are any questions.
I actually have 2 questions, I think. I think on slide 1, you had a caregiver escalation slide, and somebody wants to know. Yeah, that's it. The caregiver. Yep. Is that an industry standard slide?
Yes, it pretty much is. I mean, I developed it, but yes, it pretty much is. And if you look at it closely, it begins to look at the ADLs, the activities of daily living.
Okay.
Yep.
And then I think the Village program, we've had people try to Google it, and they can't find it. So how?
So what about Googling Beacon Hill Villages?
I think I may have just found it. This is Maureen. I have vtvnetwork.org, and it's Village to Village Network, and it talks about what a village is. And this looks like, I found the Beacon Hill one, but then it directed me to this, which seems to be the national. So again, it's vtvnetwork.org.
So it's not, you know, I don't know if it's in every state, but it's worth looking at because it does allow a senior to age at home with extra support.
And so another question is, they wanted to know if there was a AAA in Rhode Island.
Oh, I'm sure there is.
Okay.
I'm sure of it.
Would it be under the Division of Elder Care?
You would go to the Area Agency on Aging.
Okay.
So it's AAA.org. Let's see, I think the last slide, actually. Oops, sorry. Here, www.n4a.org to find an agency on aging near you. It's slide 20.
And they'll get the presentation in about a week. They'll be posted on the website.
And I'm just told that you're going to get the presentation in about a week. It will be posted on the website.
Correct.
Any other questions?
So are there options for people that, you know, maybe don't have the means to be able to afford assisted living or a nursing home? How does that all work?
So I'm going to speak in generalities because, again, every state is different, and typically every state offers their own what we call entitlements for this kind of housing. Wait, I'm going to edit that and say there are 2 national programs. First of all, any senior or the senior who is married to a spouse who was a veteran and was enlisted rather, when the country was at war, is eligible for something called aid and attendance. And aid and attendance does offer some financial support for assisted living and other services at home. Now, well, and then the veterans, so aid and attendance, if I'm correct,
I'm sure you are.
Offer money for assisted livings, private assisted livings, private nonprofit assisted livings in the greater community. And then, of course, the veterans does also have their own nursing homes that they offer as well, so nursing home beds as well.
But I don't know, I can just say that the veterans provided us with a benefit for my mother-in-law to live in a private assisted living.
That's what I just said. Yes, that's exactly right. They have aid and attendance, and they offer money for assisted livings and in private assisted living and in private nonprofit assisted livings. And then they also offer and have and run their own nursing homes, the veterans. So aid and attendance is a service, an entitlement that offered by veterans. They also offer financing for home health aides at home as well. It is a process to fill out this paperwork, and it can be difficult, but it is a vehicle to do that. The other national program is actually through Section 8. Now, in Massachusetts anyway, in our state, the Section 8 housing was provided for some of the assisted livings to build their communities. So they hold a couple of beds or apartments open for people who qualify for Section 8. Again, after that, states can offer entitlements. In the state of Massachusetts, we have something called group adult foster care. I don't know if other states offer that. But the Executive Office of Elder Affairs is probably a good place to go to find out what your state offers for entitlements.
Since we're sharing as well, I just want to share one of our employees has had a good experience with an assisted living facility. I think it perhaps is based in North Carolina and Texas, but pass that along to the folks on the call as well. It's Avendell, AVENDELLE.com, as an alternative to a nursing facility, more of a retirement home option. Mm-hmm. We also have a question about long-term care insurance.
Oh,
do you have advice for employees on that?
Yep. We're seeing more and more of that, and it seems to work well for a lot of people. I don't sell it, so I'm not going to advise you as to when you want to go out and buy it, but there are a couple of things I will tell you. First of all, if you want to use the policy, you really need to get... So if you want to use this policy, it's always after a senior has had an incident and probably cannot give you the information that you need to know to use the policy. It's always after a situation has occurred, some kind of an emergency. So if your senior has long-term care, I would advise you immediately, before you need to use it, to get a copy of what's called the summary sheet. So the summary sheet gives you just really a summary of what the policy covers and how you need to use it. But don't wait for an incident to happen to get that summary sheet. Get it before you need it. And one of the biggest reasons to get it right away is because there's typically a clock. There's a waiting period before you can activate it. And everyone's activation period is different. So some people, it's from when you go to rehab that the clock starts for that waiting period. For other people, it's when you go home that the clock starts for that waiting period before they reimburse. The other thing I think you should know that's very important is most of these insurance companies have to pre-approve the agency, like for home care or the assisted living you're using. So again, you don't want to be surprised. So if mom is thinking of moving to an assisted living, you might want to make sure, even before you use the policy, that it's a pre-approved one. And the same with an agency. So long-term care insurance, for example, will not pay for a private, your neighbor down the street to help take care of your mom. And the way these work is there's a waiting period. Everyone is different. And then they send out an independent third-party professional to approve the need. They do an assessment. There are these businesses that do nothing but send out nurses to do a screening to assess if the need is legitimate to open the case. And that's how it starts.
What is the age that people should look at for buying that long-term insurance? Is there you can't obviously do it when your elder is.
So and again, I don't sell this, so it's my personal view, but what I've observed over the years is that when people begin to think about stop purchasing disability insurance, you might want to substitute it for long-term care insurance. So that's sort of different for different people, but I think people begin to buy it in their 50s. And again, everyone is different because, you know, you have pre-existing conditions that can sometimes limit your ability to purchase it, or it increases your premiums. So.
And do you know if there's any reputable services that can assist people with preparing the paperwork for the VA?
Oh, so, you know, that's actually sort of tricky because, again, you know, I believe technically by law, you're not supposed to pay someone to prepare the aid and attendance paperwork. So I think I would be calling the veterans who, like in Massachusetts, we have some volunteers who do that. But, you know, technically you're not supposed to charge to do that preparation.
And I think that's it.
Okay, so I think we're done. Your EAP program knows how to reach me should you have any other questions. Just want to remind you all that these services are always available to employees and any adult member in their household. It's always free and confidential. Their services are on 24/7. You'll speak in, you know, there's always someone available to you, financial, whether you're looking for financial, legal, nutrition, or fitness consultations. You will speak immediately to a live EAP person. The access number is 800-648-9557, and it's www.kgreer.com. I think you all have this slide with the information. I can tell you that I've worked with Greer for years, with K Greer for years, and they're excellent. They know what they're doing, and they know how to find you the correct answers. So, and that's it. And they know how to find me should you have any other elder care questions. I'd be happy to assist you. Thank you for your time today.